Today we're going to analyze the 2025 Catan World Championship finals. We'll analyze the initial placements, some key decisions and big mistakes throughout the game. I also talked to the finalists about the biggest game of their lives. So take a seat and let's have a look. In first position we have Narendran from Canada playing as orange. In Catan, top players mainly look for three things when placing the first settlement: ore, wheat and the best dice odds, with often rolled numbers like the 6, 8, 5 and 9. The spots with the best dice odds on this board are the 8, 4, 10, the 6, 5, 11 and the 2, 5, 9, 10s. But because this 5, 9, 10 contains both ore and wheat, the best resources in Catan, it's by far the best pick. And with the way this board is set up, it's very likely only 2 players will generate ore. Therefore, the player on the 5, 9, 10 will have the potential to trade ores for the missing resources. But before you place your first settlement, you always have to know your outs for your second settlement. On this board, if these 7 spots get selected, there won't be another 3 hex spot left for Koholan to select. So he'll have to look at the 2 hex spots on the coast. Potential options would be the 8-4, the 8-10 and the 6-2 with the ore port. He points his road towards the coast, which creates 2 potential settlement expansion spots later in the game. Placing second is Mexico's Raul Jimenez playing as red. This is an interesting choice, because he can go a couple of ways with it. The biggest challenge is getting ore, especially now this 5, 9, 10 has already been taken. A good option would be to build on the 5, 6, 11 to be the second player on ore. If you don't take ore now, you will have to produce it in some other way. A reliable way, for example, is getting on the 2-for-1 port. The most interesting options on this board are the sheep port and the wheat port. The risk with the sheep port is that both the player on the 5, 9, 10 and the 8, 10, 3 can make a play for it, and you risk losing the game early on if you lose that race. With the 8, 4, 3 at the top, you can make a play for the wheat port. An added bonus is that you get total wheat dominance if the 10 doesn't roll a lot, as you'll have by far the most wheat. But with the 5, 6, 11 you run into another problem. Let's say third player takes the 8, 4, 3 and the fourth player takes the 2 spots around the sheep port. Then third player comes back and takes this spot. Now where do you go? All these options are much worse than what your opponents have. But there is an option I have heard nobody mention yet, which I think is pretty good. I'm referring to the 6, 5, 12. You slide one spot over so you can build on the 9, 12 later, and because you open up another ore spot, it's super likely third or fourth player selects it, which opens up another spot for you to work with. But even if they leave the 5 or 11 open, you can dominate the longest road by selecting 9, 3, 11 while building cities with the ore and the brick board. So I would either go 8, 4, 3 or 6, 5, 12 here. But Raul decided to go with the 5, 9, 10 to make a play for the sheep board. Italy's Guido Grossi, playing the white pieces, will place the settlement next. His best options are the 6, 5, 11, the 6, 5, 12 and the 8, 4, 3. You can't go 8, 10, 3 here, because if you leave the 5, 6, 11 and the 8, 4, 3 for 4th position, they'll both be taken, and that's just too strong. Guido selects the 5, 6, 11 and points right. 5, 6, 11 is much better now than it was for Raul as second player, because 4th position can't take away all the good combination spots from you. However, I disagree with the road a bit, and I'll explain later why. In 4th position we have David Luck from Hong Kong playing as blue. David gets to place 2 settlements in a row, but the choice isn't as clear. He ended up selecting the 8-4-3 with his first settlement and the 6-4-3 with his second settlement. Out of all of the combinations I came up with, I think this one is the best as well. You take good spots away from your opponents while making a play for both the wheat port and the 3-for-1 port at the bottom. David does take a big risk by doubling his numbers on the 4 and the 3, so if they don't roll early in the game, he's done for. But the upsides of this strategy are the potential for wheat and brick trades you can make, as well as the strong production if your numbers do roll well. I disagree with David selecting the 6-4-3 last though, because you start with the resources from your second settlement. Now he needs 2 wood before he can build a road plus a settlement, which is much tougher for him than generating bricks. Guido is next to select something that works well with the 6-5-11. The most likely option is the 8-4-3 and making a play for the sheep board. But Guido has something else in mind. He directly builds the settlement on the 8-10 sheep board, and this is what he said about it. I want a setup where I'm in charge of my own destiny, and before the game starts, you don't know how your opponents will play and if they like to trade cards. Having a port is crucial. And although I think this is crucial information, and something all finalists seem to agree on, I still think the placement itself is a mistake. The reason? What if one of the other players selects the 9-3-11? Let me tell you, you're done for. All your expansions would take at least 2 roads to get there, and none of them are any good. It's also why I dislike the road pointing on the 5-6-11, but let's see what happens. Raoul places next. Now, with the sheep port gone, he needs a new strategy. But his spots don't look great. There is the 6-11-12, the 9-3-11 and the 9-12. If Raoul selects the 9-12, he can play Orv cheap to potentially win the largest army, but it's pretty weak in terms of dice odds. The 6-11-12 gives all 5 resources, but what are you really doing? You could make a play for the largest army, but you have low ore and wheat. And you could try to take the longest road, but your settlements can't be connected. The 9-3-11 is the other option. You'd be the front runner for the longest road, despite your low brick, but you'd have a ton of wood, and if Kohelan builds on the 6-11-12, all the other players would be interested in trading wood. I don't mind Raoul selecting the 6-11-12 as none of these options are really good. And with the last placement, Kohelan gets to choose between the 8-4, the 9-3-11 and the 6-2. This is what Kohelan said about it himself. The 8-4 and the 6-2 were the spots I expected to be open, but the 9-3-11 was a surprise. And I gave that a little bit of thought. I selected the 6-2 because of the following reasons. The ore port is great for me, with so much ore production, and I can build to the 5-2 to have strong ore wheat cheap. I also noticed that all the players were on the 6 brick, so every time the 6 rolls, players need wood to use the wood together with the brick. Personally, I see why he selects the 6-2. It's a great choice. But I would have gone 9-3-11, because you kill Guido's game and then you build towards the wood port. Even better is telling Guido what your plan is and only agreeing not to build there if he agrees to trade you the sheeps until you build on the wood port. Now that the 9-3-11 remains open, I believe that Guido and Kohelan have the best setups, but David's pretty good too. But let's see how the World Championship 2025 finals plays out. At the start of the game, all players built a road towards their first expansion settlement, but the 4 was rolled twice early, allowing David to settle on the 8-4 with the 3-for-1 port already. I agree expanding to the 8-4 earlier than the wheat port expansion, because the extra production from the 8-4 is better early on than the flexibility from the wheat port. Raoul, playing as red, buys a development card early on, signaling he is going to play for the largest army. Raoul also had the option to build his road towards the 9-12 instead of the 3-for-1 port on the 5. That way he can produce more ore to buy development cards, but I don't mind this play either. A few rounds later, Kohelan built his settlement while Raoul got his settlement on the 5 sheep. The first few robbers have gone on David, which usually happens if you're the first player to build a settlement or a city. This leaves Guido as the only player without an expansion settlement, but not for long, because Guido settles on the 9-3-11 and builds a road pointing upwards to take advantage of the space around the desert hex, which are some big moves from Guido. But he's not the only one making moves. Kohelan cities the 5-9-10, while David builds on the wheat port. It's an interesting decision for David, because he could have also dropped an extra road and built on the 6-3 later. We will revisit this decision later, because David told me he believes it's a crucial play he made. But the rolls continue to go well for David, and he builds 2 roads to potentially build on the 8-10 double wheat, which would be great for his wheat port, and it would also take the wood port option away from Kohelan. An alternative is simply building on the 8 wheat. It costs 1 less wood, which can be quite expensive, while this play to the double wheat makes it look like you're trying to take the longest road, which makes you look a lot more threatening, and that will result in a lot more blocks and steals. Next, Red plays a monopoly, stealing all resources of his choice. He chooses ore, but he only receives 2 of them. With these 2 ores and the cards he had left, he builds a city, which is the best thing to do here. However, I recommend waiting on a bigger turn for the monopoly and trading your way to a city instead. The monopoly is the best card in the game. If you play it early, you want to get at least 2 cities from it, or you should play to win the game in the end. A bit later, David builds his next settlement on the 8-10, which is big for him, but also a problem, because now he's stuck with 5 settlements. Therefore, he needs to build a city before he can build another settlement, but he produces no ore. Guido settles on the 4-11 next, taking his 4th victory point. He needs a city soon too. Fortunately, he has a development card, just like red and blue. And the battle for the largest army is heating up. A lot of development cards have been bought. Most notably, Raoul has bought 3 development cards and he activated a knight. Kohelan has bought 2, so did David, but he has also activated a knight. So they're all battling for the largest army. All the while, Guido focuses on the longest road instead, increasing his production by building on the 6-3, which is a nice spot. The turn after, Guido connects his settlements by building 2 roads in between them, which isn't a bad move as you avoid others spending resources towards the longest road, by making it seem impossible, and you prevent David to take the largest army and the longest road at the same time. But Guido actually has more pressing issues. He has 5 settlements down and no city. Koholan reveals one of his development cards to be a road builder. However, he is not the only one who got a road on the board. But an even bigger development card is coming up, because Raul played his second Monopoly. To give you some context, based on a recent research, I found that players who played both Monopolies during a game win more than 52% of their games. So, in theory, Raul should have a big advantage now. However, he blundered by selecting ore and he received only 2 cards from it again. Therefore, he was only able to buy 1 development card from it. He does, however, take the largest army next turn, while Koholan settles on the 9 ore. It's key to note that Koholan adapted his strategy around this time. He initially played for the largest army, but once he realized that would be a tough path, he switched to building settlements and cities instead. And seeing this game, maybe you're thinking, hey, I wanna play these guys. Well, you can, on Catan's most popular platform, Colonist.io. In fact, I'm so glad they're sponsoring this video because I play on there myself. You can choose to play ranked or casual or the base game or its most popular expansions like Cities and Knights. You can even play with friends or strangers whenever you want. Also, I personally love its membership feature called Replays, where you can watch and study your previous games. So when you want to play Catan, go play on Colonist.io, because everybody plays there. But first, let's see who becomes the world champion. 1 round later, Koholan settles again, this time on the 8th wood. Part of the reason why David believes he should have placed on the 6th tree instead of the 3 wheat is because it would block spots from Koholan and Guido. He even called it a game-losing mistake, because at this point Raul locked the largest army while Guido holds the longest road comfortably. Speaking of Guido, he made an interesting decision. After playing the Year of Plenty, he built a city on the 8th 6-5-11 with ore and more production. His reasoning for the 8-10 is that he needs both wheat and sheep to close the game, while the wood and brick from the 6-5-11 are much less relevant at this point of the game. I personally think it's fair to go with either spot. It's very good, by the way, to copy what Guido did with the Year of Plenty in hand. It's smart to go 5 settlements down before a city, because you can argue I'm stuck, while actually having an efficient path to the city with the Year of Plenty. It's anyone's game now. Guido has 8 points now with an open settlement spots, after building 2 roads to prevent anyone from taking his spot. Koholan has 6 victory points with 2 hidden development cards, just like Raul. Raul and Koholan are also battling for these settlement spots on the 12th ore, which could be decisive because the player who won't get it just invested in these roads for nothing. David has fallen behind a bit, but he just built a city, and if his numbers roll a lot, it's still tough to beat him. Next round, Raul wins the race for the 12th ore and is potentially at 9 points now, just like Koholan, who built a city on the 5-2. David also built a settlement on the 3-for-1 port to go to 8 points potentially. A round later, Koholan reveals one of his development cards to be a knight, solo blocking David on the 8th wheat. This is a weird play, because David seems to be in last place, because Raul still seems to be at 9 points, while Guido just built a settlement and bought a development card, which didn't turn out to be a victory point, so the game goes on, but not without drama. Koholan goes to probably 9 points with a city on the 6th wood, but it gets blocked right after by Guido, who pulls another development card for the win. And it's not it. Which turned out to be his last chance, because after he built the city, Koholan Narendrand from Canada crowned himself to be 2025 Catan World Champion. Thank you for watching. I recommend subscribing because my next video will put you ahead of 99% of Catan players. And if you want to compete against the best of the best, go to colonist.io and play them.